age of AI, marketing, I would argue, is even more important in your brand behind what you as a founder, what you as a seller, what you as a company is even more important. Today, we have Michael on the line. We're going to talk a lot about marketing, a lot about branding, a lot about putting and positioning yourself in the space to be able to take advantage of the market in 2026. Michael, how you doing today, buddy?
Real good, Matt. Good to see you.
Yeah. So tell us, just to get us kind of set in the right stage, tell us a little bit about you and what your company does today for clients.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to. So Michael Fleischner, I run a company called BigFin SEO, which stands for Search Engine Optimization, which, Matt, you and I are going to talk a ton about today, as that has changed with AIO and GEO and everything else going on with artificial intelligence, which always makes for good conversation. And, in addition to owning and running this business, I own and am involved with some other businesses as well. One, actually, I know your audience includes founders. One of the businesses called Pitch Tank AI. We help founders with their pitch decks. And I also invest in a lot of different things. So whether it's talking about whiskey or real estate, I definitely have a few fun stories that I'm sure we'll talk about today.
Well, I wonder how many times whiskey contributed towards the real estate, and hopefully those didn't lead to any poor decisions on the investment side. When you say real estate, is it just like you've got some properties, some rental properties, stuff like that you are invested in?
Absolutely, yeah. It's interesting because real estate was something as a kid, my dad said, don't invest in real estate. You'll be fixing toilets at 2 o'clock in the morning. And, I'm really grateful for that, hearing that as a child, because what that opened my eyes up to really was a life of personal development and really taking a closer look at where a lot of our beliefs come from, and those beliefs, how they control what you do or do not do, even as adults. So I think, it is really important to kind of reflect back on where you are today, how you got there, and if you're somewhere you don't want to be, what has been holding you back? What are those beliefs? And doing the work to change them.
Yeah, I think it's such a strong statement to be made. I think that there are a lot of different types of people in the world. I think that some people who came from the background I grew up in could identify themselves to be a victim of circumstances. But for me, it was a thing that shaped me and trained me to ultimately be who I am. It sounds like, Michael, you kind of have a same outlook on that. I'm sure there are things that shaped you to be who you are as a child in a negative way, but it sounds like also you were able to use those in a positive way. Now, as a kid, when you heard that from your father, how did you digest it at the time? And I don't know if you even remember how you digested it at the time.
Yeah, at the time, I took things that older people were telling me as gospel, right? Mm-hmm. Do this, don't do that. Be cautious about this. Your goal should be to find a company to work for and work your way up in that company and play it safe. And, those were things that generation, it worked for them. But that was their generation, right? Not our generation. And you have to kind of chart your own course. Experience is the best teacher. So to your point, Matt, there's a silver lining to all of these things if you focus on, okay, what did I learn? And realizing that no one has the playbook. And that's why it's important to be out there in the market. And we see this with marketing in particular, especially with a lot of the agency work. There are a lot of agencies that just specialize, right? They go deep in medical, for example, or they go deep in pharma, or they go deep maybe in service businesses. I never really wanted to operate under that premise. We cut across a lot of different industries and client types, and I feel like that gives me a 10x advantage over everyone else, because I'm doing things, or we are doing things as an organization that we learn over here and can test and apply in other places, and that accelerates results.
Yeah, it's funny. You made the statement, nobody has a playbook. I would say that people have their playbook, but nobody has your playbook,
the playbook,
other than you, right? And there's things that you can learn from John's playbook, and things you can learn from Michael's playbook, and things you can learn from Susie's playbook, and those things can be learned from a positive and a negative side. I always point back to my own personal story. I mean, growing up, and I love my mother, I love my father. They're both two of my best friends, but they weren't great together. And they divorced. And after they divorced, when I was 7 years old, my mother met a second husband and ultimately a third husband, and neither of those marriages worked. And my father has met a second wife and close to a third wife that he spent the time of a wife with, and now he's married for the third time, but a fourth long-term relationship in my time that I've experienced. So I witnessed a lack of stability around marriage, but that also drove me to truly aspire to find a stability with my wife and my family situation. And something I'm very motivated and hungry with is to make sure that my one and only wife is the wife that I'm with today. And some people could look at that lack of stability and say, well, that gives me permission to have an unhealthy relationship with commitment and with long-term relationships. But I've used that as a driver to want to shape myself differently. And when I hear you say that nobody has the playbook, and sometimes your mentor can be your father, your mentor can be your mother, your mentor might not be your father. Your father might not be who you look up to when it comes to that's who I want to be in business, but he can be somebody you look up to in so many other parts of your life. And so there's parts where you can look up to somebody and other parts you can choose to not look up to. Now, around the part where you said we decided to not say within our business, we are going to be specialized in one area. I would tell you that, Michael, I think it's interesting that you've come to one conclusion. It comes back to something I always say, is that there is not one way to skin a cat, right? There's not one way to do business. I would typically advise people to at least anchor on one specialty, have one niche, and then expand off of that niche. I made the mistake of not niching down when I first started as a business. I tried to be you and say, I could be the sales coach and consultant for every industry. But I made a mistake there because I didn't specialize in one thing and then ultimately over time grow to that. Did you start with the perspective you have today, Michael, or did you have a niche and then eventually expand the knowledge?
It's interesting, Matt, because when I started out, I was a generalist and I was not getting traction. And by the way, the history here, so many years ago, I had a marketing consultancy I came out of corporate America. I consulted for a while, built up a practice, had a small exit after a few years, kind of went back into corporate. And then I started my agency, BigFin SEO. And when I started, we were BigFin Solutions. And I was trying to replicate what I did on the consulting side, and I wasn't getting any traction. And I had a really good friend, his name is Talib, he's still a good friend. He said to me, you know, what's going on in the business? We had a conversation, and he basically said, you got to pick a square. You can't be all things to all people, especially when you're starting out. And ultimately, I decided to focus on SEO because that was my bread and butter. I've written books on search engine optimization. I know it real well. And I changed the name of the company. And lo and behold, when I focused on SEO, not only did I start to get clients, but those clients quickly said, oh, do you also do paid search? Can you also do social media? Can you help me with my website? So it was actually the inverse of what I thought was the right way to go. So no, you know, we were not always across many industries. We were really focused just on SEO, and we just started really in financial, and then that expanded. And we had a large enough and diverse enough client base that today we could say literally to anyone, hey, if you need help with search engine optimization or paid search, we probably have experience there and can help. So yeah, I think all of this is a personal journey, and I would say for anyone who's exiting corporate America, you can't be all things to all people starting your own business or your own agency. But as you gain experience, as you develop a client base, as you work with partners, you can certainly expand.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. You made the same mistake. I made the same mistake. I would bet most entrepreneurs do. And that statement that your friend made that you have to pick a square, like, I'm sure this happens with you when you start working with people on their marketing. Like, marketing is messaging, right? It's kind of the same thing. And a lot of times when I'll meet with a client, one of the first questions I ask is, who is your ICP and what is your unique thing that you guys do to the market that you bring? What is the unique thing that you have value? So often people don't know how to answer that question. I'm sure that you probably struggle with the same challenge when you first start meeting. And one of the first things I have to do as a sales consultant, which is help them define that process. And I'm sure you have to do that on the SEO side and on the branding side, because until you define that, then how do you optimize for the search engine? How do you optimize for all of the things that they need to do? How do you build out an effective message?
And I think that's also how you substantiate value, right? If you can't articulate how you do what you do, or what's unique about what you do, at least for me on the other side of that, I wouldn't be very confident either in your ability or that price to value equation. Whereas, at least in my experience, I have found that the more transparent we are with our prospects and our clients, they not only inherently see more value in it, but they get more from it. And
so it's really just, having that transparency, creating that value for the clients by being clear on what it is you offer and how you deliver.
Yeah. Another thing you said earlier, which is something I've been thinking a lot about over the past year, I've worked quite a bit inside of my company. The branding and the differentiator of the branding for me as the founder versus the company that I run. And I'd be interested to get your perspective on this, Michael, is like maybe your company, as you rebranded it from the solutions to the SEO name, there's probably a rebranding of value prop and expertise that you had to now start placing around the SEO instead of the alternate solution. And I think of the space I come from, which is automotive. There's a guy that I met early in my career. His name is Greg Gifford. And if you come from an SEO world, you might even know him. He is a world-renowned local SEO expert who speaks around the world, specifically to local SEO and automotive. And he ended up going to this company inside of automotive where they did a very unique thing. And I think that is so intelligent. They essentially recruited the Greg Gifford for SEO. Then they recruited the equivalent of Greg Gifford for advertising. And then they were able to have a brand around everything they did for automotive, but then they were able to have individual specialized brands for that. So I think of, Michael, let's say we branded you as the SEO expert inside of your business. Maybe you're not the digital advertising expert, but you don't need to be because you're the operator of the business, but you have Jen Smith, who's the digital advertising guru. And then you've got Timmy Smith, who's the, AI guru. And now you have these personal brand that you're building out with inside of your business brand and having that grow. Is that something you guys have done or tried to do? The branding side of your own people in your own business?
Yeah, the branding side, my thinking on this has really evolved over the years. Initially I leveraged some of my exposure, whether I was speaking on a stage or I, published a book or I was being interviewed. I would really try to leverage that as the brand. because it was easily recognizable. As you already know, Matt, the challenge with that and the problem with that is then people only want to work with you. And it makes it really difficult to scale a business. So, what I really pride myself on is working with first of all, recruiting the right people, recruiting people who are experts and they actually deliver on what they say they're going to deliver on. That's the most important part. And then really working with them to do it the way we do it at BigFin SEO. And
Right.
we teach that rubric. I mean, whether we're talking about SEO or paid or even website development, we have very specific processes and ways that we talk about it that I think are somewhat unique to us, but everyone speaks the same language. And that's where my effort is placed. Otherwise, I could never go on vacation. I could never take a day off. And to be fair, I spent many years doing that until I
Yeah.
figured it out that if I wanted the business to scale, if we wanted to serve more customers in a better way, we had to take the things that worked, package them in a manner that would allow our team to execute the same way every time to get
Mm.
those results.
Yeah.
And that's really, I think, the key to scaling, because other than, the Neil Patels of the world, there are very few organizations that can really rely on the backs of an individual to get them to the next level.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer in that a business is only as scalable as its duplicatable process. And,
Mhm.
from as a guy who was an top individual contributor in sales, Michael, I've seen it dozens, hundreds of times when you take that top seller and you put them in a head revenue spot and they
Mhm.
can't duplicate themselves because they don't have a duplicatable process that can communicate what they do that makes them successful to people less talented than them. I
Mhm.
always use this analogy that the best head coaches in the NBA is not Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. It's Greg Popovich. It's Steve Kerr.
Mhm.
It's Phil Jackson. The role players who created a system, they were decent at basketball. Steve Kerr was a really good role player, but he was
Mhm.
never a star. But he learned how to create a system to get the most out of your Steph Curry, but also to get the most
Mhm.
out of a Draymond Green type. And Phil Jackson created a triangle offense. And until you create a system that can plug and play different levels of talent, you will
Mhm.
only be as restricted to your own ability to scale by your own talent. And it sounds like you figured that out earlier in business, which is great.
And I think the other thing that's really important to keep in mind is everyone plays at a different level. There are only so many Michael Jordans, right? There are
Right. Yeah.
only so many Shaquille O'Neals.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That's why you have teams. That's why you have organizations. That's why you have operations and frameworks to support different individuals based on where they are. And one of the things I definitely struggled with for a long time, Matt, was, oh, nobody can do it as well as I can do it, which is called founder syndrome, right? We all have it, but it's a lie. It's untrue. There are people out there who can do it better than we can do it. We just have to find those people. And that's really the key. And it takes some experience and some work to get there, but it's achievable for anyone.
Yeah, and that's one of those things that, man, an ego is a dangerous thing in business. And when you as the founder feel like you need to be the best person on your team, man, you don't even realize how you're capping your potential in the business. And I had a coach and a mentor early in my career. He said, Matt, let me ask you this question. It's undoubtedly you're a very talented and an intelligent salesperson and operator. It's undoubtedly. But can you arguably say, when was the last time you had somebody on your team that was smarter than you? And I
It's a
had
good
to
question.
really sit down and say, man, my business model is creating junior versions of me, but that also probably requires me to have people at a stage in their business who can absolutely scale past me, but when I bring them on, they're not there. And I had to have that realization that ultimately my focus should be on being maybe the best revenue leader in my business, but I need to probably bring in marketing experts who have a level of my level of knowledge to help me build the marketing side, and my level of knowledge to help me build account management or product development. And I learned really quickly about a year ago, we decided that we foresee the future of what AI is bringing, right? And ultimately, a lot of what we provide in some cases is entry-level staffing, especially on a virtual assistant side, that in my estimation, AI will be able to replace a lot of that entry-level staffing very quickly. So instead of us submitting to the inevitable, we said maybe we need to play a part in the future. And so we decided to build an AI wing of our business. Matt Uber's not a builder when it comes to like software. I don't know how to develop. And so I hired a bunch of developers. I failed. Okay. I don't know how to hire developers. I don't know how to teach developers. I know how to teach and hire salespeople. I know how to motivate salespeople. Speaking to developers, they speak literally a completely different language. So ultimately, I submitted to that failure and I decided, hey, instead of me trying to build something my own inside of what I do is, why don't I just go find a founder who doesn't know how to sell, but knows how to build, and then I bring my leverage and their leverage, and then we figure out a way to integrate our businesses together, and that has been the avenue we've gone. Did you have kind of like similar struggle in that this is my strength, but maybe I'm weak over here and I need to bring in people at my level or above my level to cover these gaps?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the best place I've seen this done, I mentioned, at the top of the show, my involvement with Pitch Tank AI. And the story behind this is this exact thing, which I didn't even instigate. It was done by Cynthia Davis, who's the founder of that company, along with Bill Harris. Cynthia and I met, had a great conversation. We knew we wanted to do some work together. And she was working with another partner of ours, this guy, Jeff Wagner, who's fantastic. And as we're doing some collaborating together, at some point, Cynthia said to me, look, this is how we're going to work together. And she was very specific. She said, Michael, you're going to bring the marketing. I'm going to bring kind of her expertise around capital raising and working with founders. Jeff, you're going to work the technology. Jeff is an amazing guy on the AI side, working with large language models, custom design. I mean, the guy's unreal. And she said, Michael, I want you to build me a website that's going to do this. I'm going to do this, and Jeff is going to do this. And it was much like your example, Matt, right? Like she had the foresight to say, look, this is where the market is going. These are the tools that are available today to meet that need in the market. And among the three of us and our extended teams, it's not just the three of us, but, among the three of us, we have everything we need to really create value at this level. So we need to really come together, each with our own level of expertise in these different areas and make it work. And that was a great experience for me because not only have we been able to make it work, but it really was an example of, at least today in business, it's, I think, a reality. Being a solopreneur is hard. You're never going to have all the expertise. And even if you could learn it, you shouldn't be learning it. There are people who spend their entire lives just developing, AI applications. Those are the people you want on your team.
Yeah. I mean, I learned it the hard way. There was quite a bit of money invested into this project that we eventually scrapped out, but it was a good lesson to be learned. Look, I'm 42. I'm still young in my business career. It's not the first mistake in it. For sure, hopefully is not the last mistake. I think it's a question of, are you being aggressive enough to be willing to make mistakes and to be able to learn from them? And that's what we aim to do. Now let's shift a little bit towards the SEO side, some of the more technical stuff. I've got about 10 plus, 12 plus years of selling SEO, mostly in the automotive space. I work with the largest website company in automotive. I've worked with some of the smaller up and coming ones, and I've worked with a variety of different companies who've sold all of those SEO things. The type of SEO I've generally sold has been local SEO, and I know there's a variety of different types. Do you have a specialized focus around your type of SEO you guys do best?
So we do everything from local SEO to what you'd call traditional SEO on a national or international basis. We've worked with some Fortune 1000 companies to what's really been emerging, which is geo, generative engine
Right.
optimization. And, I'm sure your listeners see this in their day to day. They're going to ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude for common asks that they would make
Right.
of Google. And it's amazing to me. I remember I've been in this industry so long. I remember being at a trade show, giving a presentation and saying, by show of hands, how many people here have ever Googled something? And like
Right.
maybe 3 or 4 hands went up. Like,
Really?
this industry within the last 20 years has evolved so rapidly that people kind of forget where we came from. But at the end of the day, it's all about ease of use and confidence. And if people feel that they're going to get a confident answer from
Mhm.
ChatGPT and it's open on their desktop, they're going to use it, right? Or their phone or whatever the case might be. I think what's unique about us is as we look at all of those experiences that people are having in search, we apply, which is unique to us, a 5-step optimization process that we use to really educate our clients as well as deliver our services. So that process is pretty simple. It's foundational SEO, things like Google Business, a lot of the local optimization, citations. Once we kind of lay that groundwork of foundational SEO, we do the keyword research, still really relevant, goes back to choosing who's your audience, what type of services do you provide to whom. So after the keyword research, then we do the technical SEO, which is fun for me. That's kind of where I started. But by the time you do the foundational, the keyword research, and the technical SEO, if that's all you did, right, that would put you ahead of probably 80% of companies
Sure.
who either haven't done SEO or haven't taken it seriously. And then, after the technical SEO is taken care of, we do on-page SEO. That's the 4th step. And the 5th step is off-page SEO. And all of those things cover all of the different types of SEO, whether it's local SEO, national
Yeah.
SEO, geo, AI, or AIO. Those 5 steps may change in terms of what we do in each of those steps, but it's the same 5 steps. And that methodology has really worked for us because what we find is that a lot of clients we work with, they don't get SEO, they don't really understand how it works. And that's not good for us. We want our clients to understand it because when they do, they can work with us. In fact, we're working with a great uh, wealth management company. I won't name names, but they're experts, write incredible content. And we know from the documentation and all the studies that have been done, anytime that you're producing authentic content in long form, it's going to outproduce what AI can create. It's just a
Sure.
fact. That's how it is today. Maybe over time that'll change. So we didn't want to change that, but we wanted to make sure that the content that they were creating was the content that their audience and search engines, including LLMs, actually wanted. So by combining our expertise with their expertise, we got a 1+1 = 3. And I know there are probably a lot of agency owners out there who are a little skittish about like, don't show them what's under the hood or in the black box, like how you actually do what you do. But our philosophy is different because in my personal experience, you get much further, much faster when you have a more collaborative, open and honest relationship with your clients.
Yeah, it makes total sense. Now, in your 5-step optimization process, correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of companies, when they think of what SEO is, they think of step 4, and that's it, right? And they think
Yeah.
of, I have some content on my website, and maybe I've got some couple of pages, and that's it. And they don't realize that there are so many things that are required off of your website that are probably larger indicators to the search providers than what's on your website in helping you be deemed an authority. When I learned that about at least from a local perspective, how important link building is or was. And I know it kind of changes, and maybe it's not as important today as it was. And I know there was a period where it was really important, but then they redefined why it's important and how it's important. At one point, it was like how many total links you have. And then it was like, I don't really care how many you have. It's the quality of the links. And having too many links is actually a negative thing when they're of poor quality. And so like, they're always changing the algorithm. But so often, at least in the automotive space, a dealer's like, hey, I've got custom pages being written, or I've got a blog, and that's good enough. And so often, that's only a very small part of the algorithm. Do you see that outside? I mean, like I said, most of what I do is automotives. Do you see that being the same problem for most people, which is thinking that the number one way to help SEO is just to create more content, not the quality, not the type, those things?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's a tangible thing people can put their arms around, is content, more content, better content. Unfortunately, that is only one piece of the puzzle. And I think people gravitate toward it because it's a lot easier to understand than things like schema markup for FAQs or canonical tags for e-commerce. Like, people's eyes glaze over, which is totally okay if you're not doing it for a living. If you are, and anybody on my team doesn't know what those things are, right, that would be a problem. But content is still important, but all of those other things are equally or even more important. So with LLMs, they introduced something about a year-ish ago. More sites started to do it, at least in the SEO world, creating these LLM text files. And it would be similar to a robots.txt file or robots text file, essentially, which is a file that sits at the head of your site that basically says, hey, here's how I want you to look at my site. It's kind of like a cheat sheet, if you will. And what's interesting to me is that even in the industry, as these things emerge, sometimes the large players don't catch on for quite some time. So I think the reason I'm saying this is there is a lot of nuance, and it's always important to work with people who can go deep in a particular discipline, because they're going to know things before the general populace. And that could give you an advantage if you're a business trying to rank higher, trying to rank for more keywords, trying to show up in ChatGPT. And as you know, these battles of marketing are often won in inches, not yards. And it's these small nuanced items that you want to make sure you're addressing.
Yeah. One of the other common mistakes I see when we just talk about content writing is creating content for the consumer, but not focusing on the content for the actual provider, the search provider. And that's where I see a lot of it. Like, yes, do you want to be able to have a consumer get on there and be able to understand what you do? Yes. But actually, SEO is more about what Google can answer the question. Because ultimately what you need to do is you need to convince Google that I am the authority on this topic for this client in this area that reaches this demographic. And if you can answer that question for Google, and I'm sure it's the same thing for ChatGPT, then that is how you find yourself being the answer to ultimately all a search query is a question that they are going to Google to find the answer. And then Google goes to the millions of places they can go and say, who is the best person of authority to give and provide the best answer? And that's what people don't focus on, is it's actually not creating the content for the person who ends up on your site, making sure that the place that will then suggest them to go to your site answers that. Do you see that being just something hard for people to wrap their head around, or it's pretty easy to explain to them once you can talk to them about it?
I think it's a difficult topic because you really do need to be in both camps. You need to be writing content, obviously, that people can read, but in a way that people read today. I'll give Google credit. Google, the reason they went to AI overviews and they, kind of changed character limits on things is because people don't read the way they used to read, at least not online, right? Okay, well, there you go. That change, that evolution means the type of content and the way you publish that content has to change. And to your point, Matt, the search engines are looking for the right answers to questions in what I like to call snackable content that they can literally scrape and throw onto their search pages, whether it's AI overviews or people also ask or whatever the case may be. It's all different. It's right. It's all changing and evolving. And I would also say too that if you look at what Copilot and some of the other in-app AI is doing, they're often summarizing content, emails, communications, articles with bulleted lists, right? Or bullet points. Well, Google may start to adopt that as well. So again, it's evolving very quickly, but you are right. It's got to be written not just for the consumer who's consuming the information, but for the search engines, they are a consumer as well.
One of the challenges that a lot of my team members back when I had a team that sold this, they sold SEO, that they'd a lot of times have challenges in overcoming, which is how quickly you can see results from SEO. And when you deal with a company, they're like, I want to see results instantly. And unfortunately, you have to communicate clearly as SEO it's at best a guessing game, and it's a marathon best approach. I mean, some companies were like, well, can you increase my traffic or visibility by X number in X amount of time? And I'm like, anybody who tells you that is a liar, and you should never do business with them because you have no clue nobody has any clue how to predict that. What we do know is this is what the algorithm needs to be fed. And then when we feed it, we will react. But if you're looking for instant reaction, SEO is not the place to do that. For me, I always kind of played with this analogy of like there's kind of three things you can do. And if you look at your website or your online presence as a fitness plan, that your website is your diet. You need to have your diet in check. It is at the end of the day the most important thing that's going to help contribute with the other parts of your fitness plan. Number two is going to the gym and lifting weights, trying to get stronger. You don't go from curling 20 pounds today to curling 60 pounds overnight. You got to go and progressively overload, add a little bit of weight time after time. As long as you're eating enough food and lifting enough weight, you will gain some muscle, get some size, and you'll gain strength. The good news about going to the gym is once you gain that strength, it doesn't come quick and it doesn't leave quick. Once you've gained it, you have it. And then the third option is, which is what so often people do, is they try to take the shortcut, and that's steroids. And steroids are great while you're on them, but as soon as you come off them, you lose all your progress that you gained. And digital advertising is steroids in this process. If you want an injection of leads, take steroids. If you want an injection of attention, do that. But as soon as you stop spending that 5 to 10 grand on that digital advertising approach, all of a sudden you will not get those leads anymore because you stop taking them. But if you have a foundation of a strong website, a diet, and a strong workout plan, now the amount of results you will gain from those steroids are inevitably going to be multiplied. But if you don't go to the gym and you have a shitty diet, just taking steroids isn't going to do much for you. And so that always kind of laid out that analogy. Where do I go wrong with that analogy?
Well, it really is progress over perfection. And I think that if all companies, if all founders, if all people who are investing in marketing looked at it that way, using your analogy, if they're, first of all, no one would want to just take a pill and be like Arnold Schwarzenegger, because then everyone would look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. And it'd be ridiculous.
You're wrong.
Right.
Ozempic will tell you you're wrong. A lot of people just want to take the shortcut.
Right. But even with Ozempic, right? I saw an ad the other day, lose 14% of your body weight in a year, right? They know also that taking a diet pill and losing 30 pounds in a month is not going to keep people coming back for more or give them the results they're looking for. So it's that consistency. And in fact, I saw a guy interviewed at the gym the other day, 73. This guy is ripped. And they're like, what's your secret? Consistency. He
Yeah.
said he's been working out 5 days a week since he was in his 30s, and he's still working out 5 days a week. And the guy looks amazing. So you need that approach, not just with SEO, but I think with all forms of marketing. Although, Matt, I will say that I'm a big believer that I can learn pretty much the same thing at a $500 a month spend that I can at a $5,000 a month spend, right?
Right.
If you know what you're doing, right? If you know what the framework is, what the metrics are, and you're being intelligent about how you're spending, let's say those mid dollars, you can quickly test and learn if something has promise or not. Um, but again, that's a short-term fix. It's not going to give you the long-term results that businesses need to sustain their growth.
Yeah, and so the question I would always ask to determine that, and I don't like judge a business who says I need immediate results today. Okay, cool. Then advertising is a great way to get people to notice you now. But the question is, would you rather spend, let's say, I don't know how much your SEO service is, but let's say it's $3,000 a month. Would you rather spend $3,000 a month for us to build out your thing, and then you won't ever have to spend for advertising after 2 years because we've got enough domain authority where customers are finding out about you organically? Or would you rather spend $5,000 a month every month, and as soon as you stop spending $5,000 a month, all of those customers go away? Do you want a shot in the arm, or do you want this? And most people say, let's do the shot in the arm while we're building the long-term strategy. And eventually, as our organic grows, our paid amount goes down, because not only our paid amount goes down because we're getting more natural organic leads, but also the better we are with Google, the less we have to spend with Google to be able to have that same placement we do. So in an ideal world, you do both approaches at the same time, but you're doing them for the reason of Band-Aid until this works, and then we're phasing down the spend as our organic grows up to where you have the option to move away from a paid audience if you choose to over time.
Absolutely. And I think that's why it has to actively be managed. And I also think too that there is some stacking that goes on here, right? Even from an SEO standpoint, like once you build out your Google business profile and you do it properly and you stand that up, there's just a little maintenance that has to happen. You have to post to it on a regular basis, keep it updated, ask for reviews. But if you don't invest in that initial build, then you're always going to be treading water and you're never going to have that traction. And the same is true with paid search. If you're not using Tag Manager, if you're not putting tracking tags across your website, then no matter what amount of money you spend, it's not going to be lucrative. So I feel that all of those initial investments, the foundational investments, are critical regardless of how much you're spending on SEO every month or paid search every month. But once you do that and you get over that hump, then you can start to really tailor your mix based on, it's kind of like investing, based on your comfort level and how much money you have to put into marketing. And I think that's really critical too, Matt. You know, we work with a lot of clients, again, across a lot of different industries. Some have no problem spending 10 grand a month on media because, you know, they've got a larger, a higher ticket item, perhaps, or they're used to large marketing budgets. And then we have others at the lower end of the scale, who have different product mixes, different comfort levels. So you always want to be in a situation, I think, where you have a number of marketing dials, some that you really can't move, and others that you can turn up or turn down based on performance or where you are in this journey of both organic and paid.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you totally. What would you say, do you anticipate AI affecting what you guys do as an agency? I say that because I believe it's almost inevitable that that AI will ultimately replace salespeople in general. I think there will always be a place for people, but I think that AI will be able to do a lot of the things that salespeople right now don't want to do. It's easy to forecast that, like, inbound call centers can be replaced by AI today. There's no need for a company to have an employee handling inbound calls. It can be done by AI fully, perfectly, without any need of people in their business today. I anticipate that in a business to customer, direct to consumer outreach program, AI can replace it generally today. From a cold outreach, business to customer, AI can replace sales people today. Where they can't is in a business to business cold outreach. There's just too many variables that go in to a business to business aspect. People are still going to be needed for that for the short term, but I anticipate in the next 12 to 24 months, technology will advance fast enough to where AI can ultimately replace people in that regards. And I think that through those next 24 months, I believe people will be comfortable enough to work with AI that ultimately AI will be able to replace the account executive closing, presenting solutions as well. So I know that my role in what I've done and have built my career around is there's a timeline in which AI will ultimately replace it. Do you see and forecast and anticipate the same thing happening with AI in what you do, or will it always be a tool that will need to be managed by an expert like you?
I think it's naive to think that it won't replace us. However, I think just like robots replacing people in manufacturing has forced a change in what humans do in manufacturing, what their
Yeah,
role is, I think the same is true here. I get hit, obviously, because I'm in the industry, I get hit with ads all the day, all day, every day. Click this button in AI, it'll do all of your SEO for you.
sure.
Great, but I don't know what that means, right?
Right.
And when I look at it, um, it's not ideal. Now, do I think that it could get there? Probably, probably. However, SEO is just one marketing strategy, and it continually changes and evolves. So, I think you still need a someone navigating that ship. You need a captain, and you need a team to execute. Today, you can go into ChatGPT or whatever people use and say, give me a marketing plan. But when that marketing plan says set up social media accounts, post 3 times a week, well, there are questions. Well, what should I be posting? And oh, by the way, if I can find AI software to do that, well, who's running my paid search campaign and how do I know if that's optimized? And oh, by the way, did you think about tracking everything across all the different marketing media that you're executing on? So it is a multi-layered, complex industry slash mechanism to really market and promote our businesses. Can AI do the whole thing? Maybe, but it's going to take some time. And I think for us, AI is a blessing because not only does it help within the business,
Oh,
but
yeah.
we know that more and more companies want to show up through generative engine optimization. And even if they can identify where they show up, and I'm not just talking about market research of one where you put in a prompt and you see
Yeah.
if you show up or not. I'm talking about like using these AI audits and finding, oh, we show up 20% of the time. They need to know, well, how do you show up more than 20% and what can we do about it? And I think that's the role, at least for us as an SEO agency, that we're really focused on, in the next 2 to 3 years.
I saw or heard on a podcast the other day, I think it was like an ad in between that, no, it was on a podcast. It was on Iced Coffee Hour. And if you've never listened to that
Sure.
podcast, you should. It's a great podcast.
Yeah.
They're talking about ChatGPT is introducing sponsored answers and
Mhm.
ads. I think it's a bad mistake. I think it's a very bad mistake. And they're only going to provide it to the free users, not to the pro users. The pro users will be ad free, and the free users will have to deal with that. And they'll pitch it and position it as is when you're asking questions about what's the best, Thai food place to eat locally, then somebody can also then have a sponsored ad. But I think that as soon as you start doing that, kind of the trust factor around the information it gives you diminishes heavily. And at least from what I've seen is Gemini is not going to go that route yet. And maybe Google learned from a mistake they made in regards to turning, Google platform into such a ad heavy platform. Do you think it's a mistake for somebody like ChatGPT to go ad so quick? Do you think that there's a benefit? Do you think that it will help, harm? I mean, what are your thoughts as somebody who ultimately feeds the Googles of the world, the Chat GPTs of the world, and will ultimately even
I know.
potentially be running ads on these platforms. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, part of me feels that it's inevitable. Just, again, having come up through the industry, seeing how all of these things work. The servers and the server farms don't pay for themselves on a
Right.
$20 subscription. They
Yeah.
just don't. And people who think like, I don't understand, it's not fair. Okay, but you're not running a business with millions and millions and millions of users
Yeah.
and the associated costs of that. So do I like it? Yes and no, because again, someone's going to have to run those ads, manage
Yeah.
those ads. It's good for our business. But I also think that it can benefit companies who, let's say, are smaller companies and they're just never going to show up in these LLMs as a recommended provider. And I would say the same is true of Google Ads. I think Google Ads is in a much better place. As you know, it used to be all over every page and people stopped using Google or cut back. So they're like, okay, all right, we get it. And they obviously changed that. But yeah, I think companies will either have to increase their subscription rates or they're going to have to offer advertising if they want to continue to invest in making this, you know, an everyday sort of solution or tool that people use.
Yeah, I mean, I think of like I put myself in my own perspective. I don't use Facebook often, but golly, when I do, I mean, I go into Facebook and there's literally not a person in my Facebook that I actually know anymore, and it's just a bunch of ads that are being
Yeah.
highly targeted to me based off of my profile. It's
Uh-huh.
a bunch of people that are being suggested to me that I should want to follow, but I don't know or care about their information. And man, the user experience around Facebook has been horrible for me. And I think
Mhm.
of like even on TikTok, which I am a guilty pleasure that I will digest some TikTok. When they introduced the TikTok shop, man, my whole feed became a advertising frenzy around the TikTok shop. And it's just
Yeah.
you look at the organic growth of a platform before they introduce ads and then the degradation of the user experience after, and there has to be a better way to do it. There has to be a better way to introduce this aspect. And maybe it's just, hey, if you're on a paid level of this, then you get a
Mhm.
ad-friendly user. And I don't think Meta has that. I believe maybe Twitter does. I don't know if TikTok does, but maybe that's the answer. Maybe it's like, I don't want to be bombarded, like kind of like on YouTube. If you're a premium YouTube subscriber, you don't have to
Mhm.
deal with the ads.
Right.
Um, what is your any opinion on that? Like how?
Yeah, the honestly, I think with Facebook, TikTok, X, Insta, I'm so tired of all those platforms for that very reason, right? You click on one ad and next thing you know, it's just all ads. And at some
Yeah,
point you're like, this is not what I signed up for. I think even more annoying is paying for a subscription service like Amazon Prime and then saying, oh, and now we know we used to be ad free, but now we're going to show ads. And if you want the ads removed, you got to pay even more.
yeah,
Well, that's a little bit of a bait and switch. And Jeff, you got more than enough money. I don't know
sure.
why you're trying to squeeze us for an extra whatever. But that's my issue, right? I mean, I do think the challenge companies are going to have, Matt, how do you decide where you're spending your marketing dollars? What
Yeah,
platform? And even if you don't have a marketing budget, let's say you're a small company and you just, you're a cleaning service. Well, you still need to get your brand out there. You need to, generate leads. And there's so many options. They just don't know where to start, what to choose. And ultimately, it really goes back to the basics. Who are you trying to reach? Where do they spend their time? What's your
yeah.
marketing budget? Let's generate some leads.
Last question for you. Is there a platform that is getting the most bang for the buck for the average customer you work with? I know that's a hard question to answer because there are
Yeah.
probably a variety of different types of customers
Right.
and different audiences for different businesses, but is there a
Yeah.
platform that's best?
Yeah. I'll give you two if I can. One is 50-50. So I've got some clients that we work with that are killing it on Google local service ads and others that are not. Absolute horrific. We get through verification, we do all that stuff. It just doesn't work. But we do have the other half that are just really seeing a lot of leads, good quality leads from it.
Mm.
The other is LinkedIn. LinkedIn is something I've been on for many years. We used to run ads on LinkedIn, which are very costly. We've done a lot of organic work on LinkedIn. People are always annoyed about InMail and people reaching out. But if you can cut through that noise, and instead of making a connection with an automatic response that says, "Hey, want to get married?" which is kind of the gist of a lot of these things, right? Like, book time on my calendar, even though you don't know me. Um, you can tell that annoys me a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, but if you can cut through the clutter and you can connect authentically with the right people, you can really develop and grow your business in pretty meaningful ways.
So LinkedIn ads, because I've heard of it before, but I've never I'm on LinkedIn all day. LinkedIn ads are the sponsored messages. That's ultimately what it's a direct message to your inbox. It's not in your feed.
It's
Or
both.
it's both. Okay. So there
Yeah,
is
it's
some
both.
sponsored ads that are in my feed. I'm not clearly seeing them.
That's why I like it, because
Yeah.
it's not as intense as some of these other platforms, and it is more, I think the targeting is really good.
Yeah, I do like the mix of here are the people I follow and my connections versus here are some second party connections that maybe you'd be interested in, and the content. The way they deliver that group and audience to me, I think, is way better than on some of the other platforms where you just get bombarded. Like I'm telling you, Facebook, I don't even know people on there anymore. It's just like, who are these
It's
accounts?
crazy. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, Michael, man, feel like you and I could talk for days. For the audience that we generally have are founders, which speak right to what you do, and then sellers. Before we go, any last words for the audience in regards to who should reach out to you, who should want to talk with you, and who are you most equipped to help right now?
Absolutely. Thank you, Matt. So BigFin SEO specifically works with companies that are typically $1 million or more in annual revenue. We primarily focus on SEO, paid search, and website development. So if we can be helpful in any of those aspects, let us know. I also do half-day and full-day marketing strategy sessions. So if you are a company, whether you're a CMO or a founder, or someone who's thinking strategically about the business and you need some guidance, we can certainly help you there. And then the other business, again, that I'm primarily focused on right now is pitchtank.ai. And I would encourage founders or anyone who's looking to raise capital through a pitch to check us out. We've got some really great tools to hone your pitch and make sure that you do all the right things before you walk in the room and secure that capital.
Love it. So we'll obviously put all of your information and BigFin SEO's information into the profile in that process. Michael, I appreciate you've been a wealth of knowledge. Obviously, you know what you do really well, and I've learned quite a bit today, and hopefully the audience has as well. Until next time, everybody, guys, like, comment, share. Engage with the content as much as possible to let us get this information in front of as many people as possible. Michael, I appreciate your time today, buddy. We'll talk soon.
Matt, thanks so much.
Thanks. Bye.